right.
All right. So, good morning, Amy. Thank you for making the time to have a chat with us about a bunch of things. Um, I know you from mainly Team Ontario, some grassroots volleyball stuff. Um, and we've become like casual friends in passing. We don't pass each other at OCs and not have a chat. We're like that type of volleyball relationship. Um, but I want to speak to you today a little bit about you, first of all, and also about Aboriginal volleyball in Ontario. What's it like? What role does the OVA play or does not have to play? And where do we go from here, basically? I expect we'll like branch off into other things because aside from being an Aboriginal volleyball coach, you're a mom, you're obviously female. I assume you identify as female. We could ask you a lot of things, but I just really want to hone in on this stuff for Aboriginal volleyball right now. So the first question I have is, most of our members, are majority are concentrated in the GTA in terms of numbers, and then it's spread out everywhere. In the Northwest Ontario or Region 1, we, from the staff's point of view, sort of know what's happening. But from other athletes and other coaches, they probably don't know what's going on. So the first question I have for you is, how did you get involved in volleyball in the first place?
Yeah, so first off, hello, and thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. So the way that I actually started my volleyball journey was I played when I was younger, in grade like 7, 8 is when I started. We didn't have club where I grew up, so it just went into high school. And that's kind of where my playing career started and ended. But in regards to coaching, I actually started coaching in 2006. I received a phone call from my dad, who was working at a local elementary school back home. And the school was looking for a grade 8 girls coach. So he ended up calling me up and said, what do you think? Like, you have so many great talents and you're great at leadership. So why don't you give this a try? So I did. And it just actually evolved from there. I went on coaching high school. We co-founded a club in 2007 in Fort Frances, my hometown. And it just like evolved from there. So then in 2015, it was November, December, up on my Facebook page, popped a notification from the Coaches Association of Canada, putting a call out for Aboriginal apprenticeship, an Aboriginal apprenticeship through them for the 2017 Canada Games. So I hemmed and hawed and then decided I'm just going to do it, because if I don't, I might regret it and the unknown. So I did it and got my application together and put it in. And long story short, ended up hearing in April that I was one of 2 successful Aboriginal applicants out of 84 for Ontario. So that's really kind of when my like high performance side of coaching started. So yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. But yeah, it's all the way back to 2006 is when it began.
That's phenomenal. That's good. Like me coming from a different culture, born in the Caribbean, moved here when I was 30. So I actually started working in the OVA, I guess, when you started getting involved in high performance coaching, which was 2015. I started in September 2015. So our paths crossed that way too. But coming from the Caribbean, like I found it hard here to find representation for coaching from people from the similar community. What was that like growing up for you? Did you have representation from other Aboriginal coaches?
So I didn't, unfortunately. In my playing career, I was fortunate to be coached in grade 8 by Mr. Manguel, who comes from Barcelona. So yeah, and obviously different culture. So I was fortunate in that sense, but not in the Indigenous way. I also had all male coaches throughout my playing career, and nothing against male coaches, but I didn't have a female coach in the volleyball sense. So no, I didn't have any Indigenous coaching when I was growing up at all.
That's amazing to hear. Like, I was lucky. I had the opposite. I had a good balance of male and female coaches, but here it's really different. And like, I found it really hard. You are one of two female Indigenous coaches that I've met that are actively coaching. So, and well, I've been here since 2015. So I've been actively looking as well, because from the grassroots and community outreach side, I find that the stickiness of volleyball, like the thing that gets you only wanting to play the sport, really hooked into it, especially from the coaching part, has really been driven a lot by women, and that really hasn't been celebrated enough. We see, we have 80% participants that are girls, but we also have like 80% participants of male coaches. So I completely get where you're coming from with that. What about now? Are you mentor coaching? I mean, unofficially even, younger coaches or even older coaches who are Indigenous?
Yeah, so I'm not like in an official role, but I do have a co-coach back home who is Indigenous and is started his own club this year. And we have a really good coaching relationship. In 2015, he was a strength and conditioning coach amongst another job. But and so when I decided to start another club back home, I wanted to start a club that obviously welcomed Indigenous athletes, and I wanted the club to have Indigenous coaches as well. And so I am happy to say that when that club was started, 95% of the athletes were Indigenous and 100% of our staff was also Indigenous. So anyways, Terry is his name, started coaching then. And to this day, we have a great working relationship. And so anything that I, comes across, my computer or any like experiences or workshops or anything, I always send to him, and we're always trying to figure out, obviously, how to help the North get better, because I am 22 hours away now. It's not as easy for me. Yeah. So I guess we have kind of a mentorship relationship, but yeah, nothing official. Yeah, I mean, the Indigenous coaches that were in the club, some of them are still coaching, and some of them do still reach out and like ask, but they're not coaching like full time. It's just, it might be with the North American Indigenous Games, it might be with Ontario Summer Games. So yeah, so nothing official, but kind of, a mentorship relationship, yes, with Terry.
Yeah, I actually thought I was going a little bit nuts, because I'm like, there's no way that in the size of Ontario that I could only find 2 female Indigenous coaches. But then apparently that is the case. At least those, who are not just coaching grassroots, but are actually trying to move up in their pathway or develop their own pathway. So that's at least that's keeping me sane. I'm not going nuts.
No, you're not.
Yeah. But like, it's really different. Like I have no lived experience of this. I'm a parent, but I'm not a wife. I don't know what it really takes to be a female coach, a female Indigenous coach, a female Indigenous coach and mother, a female Indigenous coach and mother who has kids actively playing and traveling and supporting them too. That's a broad thing. Like, how do you manage all that?
So the most incredible thing is I have an amazingly supportive family, an amazingly supportive husband. And to be honest, if I didn't have Steve, my husband, I would not be able to do this. I also have support in my children, my older children, who help tremendously. So yeah, like, I mean, it's just about balancing, I guess, and like prioritizing. And I didn't really touch on this, but I'm also an assistant coach at Waterloo, and the head coach, Richard Eddy, is just amazing in the fact that he understands, like, if I can't get to a practice or something's going on with a child, like, he's also super supportive that way. So I think I'm lucky in the fact that I'm surrounded by support. And that helps me be able to do what I love, which is coaching. Back in 2019, March of 2019, our youngest son was diagnosed with multiple disabilities. And one of them being seizures. So I actually was going to opt out of coaching because I just felt like I needed to be home, and like, what if something happened when I'm coaching? And it was actually my husband who said to me, like, Amy, we need to make this work for you. So what is it going to take? How can I help? And so we sat down and we hashed it out, and I was able to continue on again because of the support. So yeah, I have amazing people around me. So that helps for sure.
That is phenomenal. I mean, tell Steve we love him too.
I will.
Yeah, I met Steve once and I like him. He gave great dad advice, and I was a new dad. So I was still a walking zombie like that early into it.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, he's a well-conditioned man with that, I know. So
yes, for sure.
Good. I'm so happy we're having this chat, because I mean, I'm hoping that more female coaches or female aspiring coaches and Indigenous coaches actually get to see this once we actually have it launched on our YouTube channel, and it serves as an inspiration to see it's achievable doing what you do.
Absolutely. Yes.
Really, when you think about it, from 2015 starting high performance coaching, like learning that, and then getting to the assistant coach level at Waterloo is quite a fast trajectory, even with a family. I mean, that's even more baggage, right? So healthy baggage, but still baggage,
yes.
As compared to someone single. So wow, that's truly inspiring. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the Indigenous side now.
Sure.
So you have lived experience of being an athlete, a mother to an athlete, and a coach. So what are some of the barriers you guys find in participation in Indigenous volleyball? Here in Ontario,
sorry?
Here in Ontario, at least.
Yeah. So in 2017, we moved to the GTA, and I found down here, there isn't a ton of barriers in regards to, like, things are pretty close. There's a ton of clubs everywhere. But in the north, when we lived back home in Fort Francis, the thing about up there is geographically everything is spread out so far. So like things like clubs are sometimes hard to get going because kids are coming like from an hour and a half, different communities to just practice. So like, thinking of like practice times, they can't be too late because these kids have to travel home. Days of the week, and there isn't readily available facilities up there. So like, I'm just going to talk about Fort Francis, but we have one high school and they're the best gym. And so every multi user group is trying to get, a spot at the high school. So then there isn't enough room for everyone. In regards to the Indigenous side of it, like there's many First Nation communities in the north. So again, speaking of Fort Francis, there's 10 surrounding First Nation communities up there. But like the furthest one is 3.5 hours away. And not so long ago, they were a fly-in community. So like trying to get to them, right? And a lot of different barriers for these athletes, like just even traveling, and like parents are working. So like trying to get them to the practices, you know, when they live an hour down like a bush gravel road, right? So yeah, like though that's probably the biggest adversity right now. The great thing about the Indigenous communities is they usually all have their own gyms. So if you're able to you know, get a coach to come in and run something, then like that you're able to access the gym that way, and they're also welcoming. This past summer, I was approached by Chief Henderson at Matanja Gaming First Nation, and ran a one-day clinic in their community for them, and the whole community like came out, and like we're just so excited to have, you know, a coach that was in there that knew a little bit about volleyball to help them out. You know, and so it's there. It's just figuring out how to maneuver the whole process of getting into the communities, or finding a way to get the athletes from the communities into like a town or a city to practice. Yeah. So
right. I completely agree. Like, I know a lot of those things sound like really tough barriers, especially geography. But I mean, I've been lucky enough to work in this sport across different countries in the world. And I think one thing that we have not done that we have to look towards in the future is redefining what volleyball means to people and how it's played, right? So our existing competition model is not going to fit the, you know, Region 1, for example. We have to redefine what that is. We're doing that now, thankfully, and it's going to take some time to pick up.
yeah.
That's one. Two is like the investment in people. It's completely different where most coaches follow a pathway like yours. They're either a former player and they got introduced into coaching later on, either by their own personal interest or by someone calling them up and saying, hey, would you be? Or they're a parent and they go, I'll volunteer this time. But what you find, or what I've found in similar instances, is that we sort of have to invest in a human resource to be like a gatekeeper in that community, to be the volleyball person or the sport person. I don't think a lot of sports have really gone that way in Ontario yet, but I hope that is something that we could, for volleyball, have a shift towards and say, you know what, if it means putting out a little money and investing and seeing how this goes and learning how it works, that we can find this medium where we plant something and that 3 to 5 years down the road, we can start proper integration. I know a lot of people are really hurried to have integration immediately, but it just doesn't always work sustainably like that, right?
Yeah. You know what? And the other thing, Kerish, is I'm hitting my working experience, but many years ago, I worked for the Gijwa Health Access Center. And one of the things that we did was we went into the communities, myself and another lady, went in the communities and ran like a 2-day kind of like program for healthcare workers. And so why I'm saying this is that could definitely be something that is looked at for the Indigenous communities. And a lot of times they have access to some funding and would be able to help in that sense, bring somebody in, you know, you run a however long course. And then you have maybe some certified coaches or some coaches that are understanding the basics, the grassroots of volleyball. And then they can turn around and run programming in their communities, which ends up helping, obviously, their community members. But it also gives opportunity to athletes that might not be able to make it to like a North American Indigenous tryout, or is too hesitant to go because they think that they, you know, aren't good enough, or like maybe even start a club team. Like, how amazing would that be if, you know, there was like a Lacroix First Nation like club team, or like a Manitou Rapids club team, you know, like just And then like maybe they all get together and they play in like a club, like a league, right? Like you're traveling
Yes.
to each community and you're playing in a league, right? Because
Yeah, like,
again, yeah, like the closest OVA sanctioned tournament to us would be like Sudbury, which is
yeah.
16, 17 hours away, right? So not very feasible to go and travel for a tournament. But yeah, like I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we could learn even from our own. The last couple of years, like we've changed our approach with Smash Ball a little bit, where we're trying to get into schools just everywhere. Some clubs have been really good in supporting us in doing that, but then sometimes you have school boards coming to us and asking, what do you do? And I found the most effective thing is the littlest amount of work, which is connect 3 schools and have them run a pilot. You know, if we could connect 3 Indigenous communities, I think that'll be awesome, an awesome start, because it builds and sustains and grows from there so much easier. Um,
Agreed.
Everything seems achievable. Transport now seems achievable. Accessibility to gyms can be figured out, etc., etc., etc.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, so, if you had to give some advice to an Indigenous athlete who probably want to transition into coaching, or even someone just wanting to start from the Aboriginal population on a whole. And I know this is a very wide question to ask. What advice would you give them? Like, what should be their first step? What should they look out for? What challenges should they look out for, if anything at all? What system works best for them? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think to get into coaching, regardless if you're Indigenous or not, you just have to take the leap of faith and know that like you're not going to know everything right away. Like I'm telling you, when I stepped into the Team Ontario gym in 2016, my eyes were this big, and like I was like, where am I and what am I doing? Right? Going from very much development all the way to the provincial level, like my eyes were opened, right? And like I at one point was probably scared to fail, but then I realized that in order for me to grow as a coach, I'm going to fail a million times, and I have to be okay with that. And so knowing that you're going to hit those bumps in the road when you're starting out coaching it's part of it. And you're not going to know everything. And the highest people don't know everything. They're learning every day as well, regardless if you're a development coach or a national coach. You're learning every single day. So I think just taking that leap and like getting a plan, like what do you want to do? Like, do you want to like do a development and just like, run like a month of like, programming for athletes to just come and learn the game? And then do you want to run a club team? Like just figuring out what kind of programming you want to do. The biggest challenge I think for the North is, and maybe not so much anymore, but is getting your like NCCP courses, only because there was nothing offered in Northwestern Ontario. So like for myself, I had to travel to Winnipeg like many weekends for a 4-hour course, right? To get my certification. So that's the biggest thing. But now it's online. That's a little bit easier. Finding a mentor, like somebody that you trust and like knows a bit about the game. Like I always tell everybody, and it doesn't matter again if you're Indigenous or not, like if you have any questions that I can help with, like please feel free to reach out to me. I will help as much as I can get you, where you want it to be. And if I don't know the answer, I usually know someone that might know the answer that I can help, put you in touch with. Like I think if I can do it coming from a little town of 8,000 in Fort Francis and my little community of 900 people, anybody can do this. Like anybody can do this, and they just have to believe that they can do it. And like again, the biggest thing is just write a plan, figure out where you want to go, reach out to somebody, ask questions. We need Indigenous coaches. We need coaches in general in the North, but we need Indigenous coaches so that the children that are coming up see, Indigenous people in these positions, and then it becomes like, I can do this too, or I want to do that. I'm going to do that. So yeah, biggest challenge is NCCP courses and figuring out that pathway, because it does get overwhelming. And then just figuring out a plan. Those are my biggest pieces of advice for the Indigenous coaches in the North, for sure.
That's excellent advice. You're talking, and I'm there's a lot of stuff going through my head that on the system side, the side that we manage now, that we sort of forget the fear people have towards coaching, and this is not Indigenous only. It's like anyone entering for the first time, is that fear is there.
Yeah.
I found, similar to you, that the coaching environment here is fairly welcoming, but it's probably something we don't really talk about much, that it's a welcoming environment. We find a connect and a connect and a connect, and that's how we find our space. But I think that's something we definitely have to promote more, is that culture of being welcoming to new coaches and new athletes. I remember specifically hearing a story about years before I was employed here, a push to have more Indigenous athletes involved in the TMO type programming, and there were a bunch of kids who were selected, but they did not feel welcomed enough that they left the camp before the camp ended, that's something that anyone who's an ally or anyone involved in volleyball in general, it's something that you have to learn about your culture, is that your culture is not someone else's culture. Canada is ridiculously diverse, Ontario doubly so. And this sport of volleyball is growing in its diversity every year. We're becoming a more and more welcoming space. I don't know if that's really by design, or if that's just our population, or if it's the culture of our clubs have become more and more welcoming. I can definitely say the culture of clubs have been more welcoming, from the position I sit in. So that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But I know it's difficult for non-Indigenous persons to go beyond doing an NCCP course or doing one of the others. I've done all the courses. And I have a fear of making sure that the things that come out of my mouth, or if I have to host kids at a camp, or if I have to work with a coach, that I am a welcoming person. So I think if you're a new coach who's Indigenous, understand, if you're scared, the person working with you has a little bit of fear too. They don't want to offend anyone, and they want to do the best job possible for you. This volleyball environment is super welcoming.
Yeah. I think, Kerish, in regards to that too, I think what would be amazing, and again, this is just me hoping, I guess, but I think it would be amazing for the Aboriginal coaching module to be mandatory. And because then you understand a bit about the culture, right? The other thing with, unfortunately, I haven't really been involved in any communities near me here in Southern Ontario, but in Northern Ontario, volleyball is played all the time, all the time. The thing is it's not the, how do I put this? It's not where someone who's coming in with a technical background would take a look and say, oh, this is really great volleyball. Because the technical part of it isn't always, I guess, by the book, if for lack of better words. But it is amazing volleyball, things that you think are going to hit the ground, somehow, it gets popped back up and you're like, wait, what? What just happened there, right? So I think my advice in regards to anyone that's going into a community or working with the Indigenous population is to just ask, say, like you said, I don't want to offend. What should I be doing or shouldn't I be doing? You know, and just kind of open that communication with them. Like sometimes eye contact is seen as almost rude. So like, you know, but in some cultures, if you don't make eye contact, people are like, why are you not making eye contact with me? But in the Indigenous culture, that's something that, you know, you don't do all the time. So yeah, like just those, trying to, I don't know, eliminate those barriers, I guess, would help as well. Yeah.
I kind of love that we're living in a digital world, like forced to live in a digital world now. I don't love the whole COVID pandemic thing.
Yes.
But again, just the sparks are going off in my brain that this is something that we could be adding to our coaches academy, for example, is literally flying in and do a mini documentary of someone making mistakes who's not Indigenous, and having that shared cultural experience, because not everyone's going to be able to do that, but someone's should be able to do it, and again, get the voices out. Speaking about getting the voices out, one of the recommendations we have from our Equity and Inclusion Committee at the OVA was, you know, to start to target months to talk about each issue in terms of advocacy and share some education. So of course, February was Black History Month, like generally celebrated worldwide. We did a lot of focus on that, and we did some focus on mental health as well. Next month, we're doing a lot on sitting volleyball. I'm saying a lot. It'll just be like 3 videos, but it's opening up conversations for people to see where things go. Of course, I would like the month after to speak about Indigenous voices. I'm going to ask you after this meeting at some point in time to connect me with what Indigenous voices you think we should have. I mean, I'm going to definitely talk to Hilary McGregor, who sits on our committee from Aboriginal Sport Ontario, to give the big picture view of Aboriginal sport and as it exists. I'll probably come back and have another chat with you for all that, you know, or probably with your daughter, even you and your daughter, to say what has that experience been like. But beyond that, I find it really hard to find a connect to someone else to speak to about Indigenous voices. I know one person, Bob Kowal. I don't know if you know him from Kenora.
I do know Bob, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm trying to dig him up and see if I could talk to him, because Indigenous volleyball didn't just start yesterday. Indigenous volleyball actually was taking place since the 70s, even before the 70s. Like there's so much history there that's not captured, and that I'd love to share the stories on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for all of Ontario, it would be awesome.
Absolutely.
So after this, I'll probably have a chat with you about that.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I want to talk to mention to you, so you could also spread the word, and of course for anyone seeing this video, is that Volleyball Canada is actually on a really good learning phase of what Indigenous volleyball is and how do we achieve reconciliation through Indigenous volleyball. And I just really hope that if ever they reach out to you or they reach out to anyone there, please give nice, good, honest feedback. I mean, it's great that our parent body is like taking the lead on this and supporting the rest of us. I mean, they do that in general for a lot of things, but in this issue in particular, reconciliation, it's phenomenal to see a governing body do that for sport. It's something very, very unheard of. So I had to give them a little pitch in here too.
Yeah, you know, what I appreciate and touches my heart is when just the acknowledgement of the land. Like, I think that's, and I'm seeing that pop up, you know, within the OVA a lot with Volleyball Canada. And I think right there, that's like the beginning of, like, you know, finding ways to with reconciliation. So like, kudos to you guys and kudos to Volleyball Canada for that start. You know, I think that's amazing, because that's something that can be done. that doesn't take much time or doesn't, take very much to do, but means so much to the Indigenous people. So great job on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it takes less than a minute. It's
exactly.
literally,
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I hope to chat with you soon once we dive deeper and deeper and deeper into Indigenous volleyball over the coming years. And good luck with the rest of coaching for this year under a pandemic. And
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We're
been
all adjusting.
interesting. Yeah, absolutely. The thing about COVID, Kerish, is we've all had to adjust. And it's been good adversity for all of us, right? And we've been able to connect with athletes in ways that we wouldn't be able to, right? Like over Zoom, and like actually getting to sit down and like chat with them instead of just always getting the business, about volleyball. So I don't know. I've seen it as a blessing in disguise, I guess. As much as I want to be on a court coaching and I want them competing, it's been good. It's been a welcoming break, I guess, for lack of better words. So no,
completely agree. Like, a big part of my job is speaking to people and hearing their stories. And I mean, not just for this video, I mean, like even before COVID, but COVID has amplified it. And the communication I see, like between us and our clubs, us and coaches, us and athletes in terms of the OVA, it really does feel a lot more like a year on that we are all the OVA. It's something that we keep trying to bring to people. Like, I feel so much more connected now to everyone without actually seeing them at an OCs, unfortunately. But
absolutely, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me and reaching out and being allowing me to kind of tell a little bit about my story and kind of helping the Indigenous population out with, coaching and the barriers that they see. So just thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. You take care.
All right. You as well.